and this one here is starting the behaviour part of your options. So the whole thing is being split up. This is me developing a bit of a flowchart without actually having a flowchart. But you can split behaviours into innate and learned. The innate behaviours are the ones you come with, or born with, they're instinctive, they're just there. And the learned behaviours, obviously learned. The innate will split up into 3 different subgroups, and the learned, I think there were 7 different subgroups. So see that as kind of a developing a little mini flow chart. So let's go. For the innate ones, you've got reflex, kinesis, and taxis. So reflex first. That is no more than what you've got in your GCSE knowledge. They're fast, they're protective, and they're unconscious. So the automatic nervous system involved there. You've got automatic responses there. Anything from blinking, pulling your hand away from a hot object, there's not more to them. That is something that's already there in your, when you're born, you know how to do things. For newborn babies, there's something called an APGAR test if you want to check that out to see what different reflexes should be there at birth. The next type of behaviour, innate behaviour, is kinesis. Now, kinesis and taxis kind of go hand in hand. Kinesis, I've folded that up here, I've made that in capital letters. It's a whole organism thing, but not in a direction. So kinesis will look like a reflex, but is technically not a reflex because the whole organism is involved and not just your sensory and then relay neuron and then your motor neuron. The whole organism is involved and it is responding to a stimulus, not to one another, to a stimulus. If you put insects, let's say grasshoppers, into sunlight, they will just all move faster simply because there's light there. Turn on the light, they move faster, but it is not necessarily going in any direction. It does not seem to go into any direction, left, right, up, down. So it's just because there's a stimulus there. That one's photokinesis. And the wood lice that are mentioned as an example in your syllabus, they move faster when conditions get drier. It's just, it gets dry, they move faster, but not necessarily in a particular direction. So kinesis, whole organisms, but not in a direction. The taxis, now is where your whole organism moves in a direction. A bit like positive and negative geotropism and phototropism in plants. That sort of wording is used. So positive meaning towards, negative is meaning away. E. coli, look at that beautifully in italics. Move, hint, hint, by the way, for your exams, move towards the higher glucose concentrations present if you give them a bit of a range. That here is positive chemotaxis. Cockroaches, well, first of all, show, if you go back to the last, I'm going back here for the kinesis. Cockroaches are insects that will move faster if there's light present. But not only will they move faster, cockroaches show negative phototaxis. What does that mean? Negative meaning away. So they're moving away from where there's light. They're moving faster because of kinesis, and they're moving away from the light in a direction at that point, and then it's a taxis. Last one, euglena, moving towards light, positive phototaxis, as they have got not only a mouth part for heterotroph feeding, but also you've got chloroplasts for autotroph feeding. That takes us to the learned behaviours, and there are quite a few. Again, I'm going to go through those in some sort of order. Thinking of, if you were the examiner, if you've got a larger chunk like this, you could give a larger question. Now, you will not get 9-mark questions in the options, but you could still get 4 or 5 or 6 mark. You still could get longer answer questions, or maybe some scenario of something that's been seen. Can you identify the different ways in which behaviour has been learned? So going through those. First, you've got habituation. If you're learning to ignore a stimulus because there are no consequences with it. Let's say light switches on. There's no food reward. There's no electric shock as punishment. So no, there's no response to that. There's not needing to be any response. So for example, if I was to make a loud, startling noise, the first one will hit you. It will be startling, it'll be noisy. But if you had that same thing, yes, it would be rather irritating, but it becomes sometimes you kind of, yeah, okay, that's now standard, that's now norm. You no longer stay as startled or get as startled with those noises. They've done some really fantastic and weird experiments with fetuses in utero, as in during the pregnancy, playing noises to those babies in the womb, startling noises, as in loud noises. And how do you recognize whether a baby is startled? You see with an ultrasound, do they move in accordance to that noise and kind of jerk a little bit perhaps, or does their heartbeat increase? And at some point, if you play repeated noises to those fetuses, after about 34 weeks, if noises are repeated, then they're just being ignored, which means that some form of habituation, some sort of habituation learning is taking place already before birth. The next one is imprinting. That's quite a sweet one. Can be seen in quite a lot of bird species and some mammal species as well. It happens at a very young but critical stage, very early on in learning. It seems to be for geese in particular, and the most research has been done with geese and ducks. The first thing that is large and they see, move, or smell, or hear, or touch, the first large thing that they've got around them, that's the thing that they're going to follow. Whether that's human legs walking away and they think, right, that's now mummy, daddy in one, and they will follow that for a lifetime. So that is imprinting. The associative behaviors, there are two of them, the classical conditioning and the operant conditioning later on. So first one, the associative behavior, classical conditioning or Pavlovian conditioning. I'm sure you've heard of the Pavlovian experiment with ring the bell, feed the dog. Dog salivates because you have the food there. Ring the bell, feed the dog, ring the bell, feed the dog. And after a while of training, and here comes the keywords that you now need to know for your syllabus. You are getting the neutral stimulus, the neutral artificial stimulus, which is the doorbell or bell, whatever bell you've got, paired with the natural stimulus. The natural unconditioned stimulus is the food. When food is there, digestion starts, and that means saliva is starting to be released. So that's your unconditioned stimulus, your food being there. The bell sound, once it has been associated and once the animal has been conditioned to link the unconditioned stimulus, so the now new artificial stimulus to, right, there will be food coming and salivation should start, then that conditioned stimulus, once it is learned, can be left by itself and you can just ring the bell and your dog starts salivating completely without any food being there. That would be the Pavlovian conditioning. You've also got operant conditioning. So if as an operator, you can either give food rewards or punishments. The classical work done by Skinner, that is literally mice in a box. You've got a lever. If they push the lever, food comes. So if they, with their paws, manage to get onto that lever and get food released when pushing on the lever. You can, as punishments, involve loud, startling noises or electric shocks. Animal friendly, yeah, well done. But this has been used to condition animals. It has been done with pigeons as well. You can train pigs, apparently are extremely trainable. With food rewards, pigs will learn so many tricks, better apparently than chimps and dogs. So there's a lot of operant conditioning that can be experimented with. There are some human experiments, and I've actually seen a sweet one being done with young children. With young children, I'll give you one cookie now, one biscuit now. If you can wait for a minute, I'll give you 3 biscuits. I'll give you 3 cookies. It seems to be an age cut off, apparently. If you're really young, you cannot resist and you just have that one biscuit. However, that one cookie. However, if you're a bit older, apparently it kicks in that you gradually can make that decision to wait that 1 minute until you get your 3 biscuits. And then comes the question as to, as adults, what character traits do we have if we go for immediate rewards or if we would rather wait and go for larger rewards? Don't know who's going to write the next computer game that gets us that next question. Right. Latent learning comes without rewards. Latent learning means we just want to investigate. Animals just want to find out whether or not there's a food reward or something nice at the end. So if you give rats a maze, they're just going to zigzag around it and learn it anyway, either out of boredom or out of, I don't know what it's out of, but it's literally exploratory. Rats will go around the maze. Now, if you give one group of rats a food reward at the end of the maze every single day, they will be going through that maze pretty fast. They will be going through that maze pretty fast. However, if you have another group of rats that are just left to explore that maze without food reward, and then on one day start giving a reward, they are just as fast as the ones that were trained with the food reward. So there's no speed difference. They have learned the maze. If they know there's food on the other end, then yeah, they have learned that maze. So latent learning is a thing. You then get something called insight learning. If you have a chance, see if you can watch Curler's experiment. I found a little GIF, which is a short version. On that proper YouTube video, you've got some extended experiments later on with monkeys actually collaborating and sharing the food reward. That was the experiment that was given by it. But Curler's classic experiment was hang food really high up, out of the way, give the chimpanzees a couple of boxes and sticks, and we'll see what happens. And the chimps get a bit frustrated and a bit grumpy and angry because they can't get to the food. However, once they've learnt it, this is then a term that Köhler has just primed that term, that insight learning, that, this is how you do it. Obviously, they've learned it. They know how to get it. Once they've learned it, they can reproduce that. Later, fMRI studies have linked this moment to something happening in the right temporal lobe. So there's all sorts still to be happening there. So that is Köhler's insight learning study. You then have imitation learning. Imitation learning is not observed in all animal groups. You can see it in birds and monkeys and ape species, and also some of the cetaceans. So what is being seen? How do you open nuts? This is something that youngling is watching older ones do, whether you use a stick or a branch or something to kind of break the nut open, or a stone or a bigger rock, or there seems to be specific places where your nut doesn't slip away, and therefore the rock on top of it is most productive. That is copied from an older generation. Now, different social groupings learn different things from their elders, if that makes sense. Now, if that can be seen as some sort of culture within animal species, that's now food for thought, whether that is culture. Monkey species have been observed washing their vegetables, washing potatoes, when watching humans wash their vegetables. And obviously the little lovely video with the orangutan down here washing clothes, orangutans washing their hands with soap and so on. That is also copied. That's imitation learning. Whales and dolphin songs, there's investigation stuff going on there. There's work going on to see how much of their songs are imitating what is going around. With regards to birds, if you would like to watch the lyrebird, that's quite a cool one. Attenborough's done a great job with a lyrebird video there as well. Right, that is it for the behaviours overview.